It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as we look at if John Cena would ever work for another wrestling promotion. RIC FLAIR content has been removed from the WWE network following a recent controversy. An Impact Wrestling star has been real-life suspended. And AEW Rampage is set to become 2 hours long for one night only. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first, let's take a look at the ratings for this week's episodes of WWE Raw and AEW Dynamite, as once again AEW have topped WWE's Monday Night Raw key demo rating. Starting with Raw, they were down just under 10% from last week in the overall viewership, dropping from 1.849 million to 1.67 million. In the all-important key demo, Raw dropped 17.3% from last week, going from 0.52 to a 0.43, which is a drop from 670,000 to 556,000 viewers between the age of 18 and 49. AEW Dynamite was also down compared to last week's fallout from the All Out pay-per-view, as they dropped 11% in the overall viewership, going from 1.319 million to 1.175 million. They were also down just under 16% in the key demo, dropping from 0.52 to a 0.44. This equals roughly 574,000 viewers in between the age of 18 and 49, compared to last week's 681,000. Despite coming short of Raw in the overalls, this marks the second week in a row that Dynamite has outdrew WWE's Monday night show in the key demographic. Next up, let's jump across to NXT, or NXT 2.0 as it's now known, as we have an update on the Bron Breakker name situation. For those that missed it, Bronson Reich Steiner, who is the son of wrestling legend Rick Steiner and the nephew of Scott Steiner, debuted on the NXT reboot, but he was given a new ring name. WWE were set to give Bronson the name of Rex Steiner, with him set to continue the family legacy, but when he debuted on NXT this week, he showed up with the new name of Bron Breakker. There was also no mention of his father or uncle, besides a brief dog-faced gremlin reference from Vic Joseph, which is the nickname of his dad. It has now been revealed by the Wrestling Observer that WWE have banned the commentary team from mentioning his family members. There was also two other second-generation wrestlers making their NXT debuts, with Von Wagner being the son of Wayne Bloom, as well as Brooks Jensen being the son of Bull Buchanan, and neither of these two men would receive mention of their heritage. Bron Breakker seems set for a major push on the developmental brand after convincingly defeating LA Knight to open the show, before later confronting new NXT champion Tommaso Ciampa. This week, former WWE host and commentator Renee Paquette, formerly known as Renee Young, appeared on the Wrestling Inc. Daily podcast and discussed her non-compete clause and a potential future in All Elite Wrestling. Renee left WWE in August 2020 and has been subject to a 1-year non-compete clause, which means she's been unable to work for another promotion until now. She revealed that she is now officially a free agent, and the subject of a potential move to AEW came up, and she seems open to the idea, and she said, "I'm definitely open to the idea. I miss pro wrestling, I miss being involved in the pro wrestling world in that capacity, but I don't know what that job would be or what my role could be within AEW. We could probably rattle off a couple of ideas of things to do." AEW is growing, their broadcasts are growing as they're adding on new shows. I think there's definitely a role. I don't know that I necessarily want to jump back onto commentary by any means, but I think doing some interviews, doing some features. She went on to say that if she were to work for AEW, she'd like to do something similar to her podcast Oral Sessions, or the Throwing Down show that she hosts on SiriusXM with former UFC star Miesha Tate, and she added, "I love doing features, I just love pro wrestling. I love all the athletes behind it, so getting to pick their brains in sort of an Oral Sessions way or Throwing Down way, to have them be part of a broadcast with AEW or something like that could be really cool." Renee has been spotted backstage at AEW shows to accompany her husband Jon Moxley, and was even seen in the background of a recent episode of Being the Elite. There's no doubt a place for Paquette in AEW, whether it be as a host of a new show similar to Talking Smack, or even sit-down interviews for Dynamite, Rampage, or the Countdown shows before the pay-per-views. I'd say that at this point it's highly likely she'll work with them in some capacity in the near future, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. WWE superstar and Hollywood actor John Cena recently appeared in a fan Q&A at the Hollywood SuperCon event last weekend. He was asked if he would ever consider working for another wrestling promotion, with Cena ruling out any such move, and he said, "There's a whole never say never philosophy, and I'm also that way in life because you never know what life will bring you, but I can with certainty say no." Whilst this has always been an unlikely scenario, Cena's name did briefly pop up in fans' mouths when AEW teased a quote major signing at AEW Revolution this year, but of course it ended up being Christian Cage, which led to many fans feeling that he's not a major signing. There has been many wrestlers who have stated they'd never work for anyone else but Vince McMahon, this including former AEW World Champion Chris Jericho, but something tells me that Cena will probably keep his word. Cena last worked a match for WWE in a dark match at the Madison Square Garden SmackDown, teaming with the Mysterios to defeat Roman Reigns and the Usos, but now it seems like he's heading back to Hollywood with no news on when he will be back. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you drop a like on the video as it helps me out a lot, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head, hopefully, towards 100,000 subscribers. But now, let's press play on the video. This week, the latest episode of Dark Side of the Ring aired, which covered the topic of the plane ride from hell in May of 2002. Following the incident, a lawsuit took place which saw two female flight attendants claim separate incidents of sexual harassment involving Scott Hall, RIC FLAIR, and Dustin Rhodes. On the show, one of the flight attendants, Heidi Doyle, would detail an incident with Flair, who allegedly exposed himself to her, forcing her against a door and forcing her to touch him. This has led to backlash towards the 16-time world champion and social media, which has resulted in an episode of WWE's Storytime being removed from the WWE network. On the show, Flair tells the story of flashing himself at flight attendants, which was then animated into a comedy skit. An ad campaign for the company Car Shield, which featured Flair, has also been paused due to the controversy. Rick was said to have been on the verge of signing for AEW in the near future, with fans assuming that a recent angle involving his son-in-law Andrade, who ended ties with his manager Chavo Guerrero, would lead to the Nature Boy stepping into the role. If this was indeed the case, it's likely that these plans will be put on hold, if not scrapped altogether. Another wrestler who received backlash from Dark Side of the Ring was Tommy Dreamer, who was a talking head on the episode. On the show, Dreamer would brush Flair's actions off as a joke and would say Flair is the Nature Boy for a reason, and he said, "He's just flaunting, styling and profiling, doing the Ric Flair stuff where everybody's going to laugh about it." But obviously someone took offense to it. He would then compare this supposed offense to people being offended that he was wearing a ponytail, with fans feeling like he was minimalizing the accusations. Dreamer's current employer, Impact Wrestling, have taken action over his attitude towards the situation and have now suspended him as a result. Impact president Ed Nordholm is said to have sent out an email to the roster to inform them that Tommy has now been suspended indefinitely, this according to PW Insider. Nordholm stated that the company is aware of Dreamer's comments and that they were out of line with the core values of the company. Dreamer was at the Skyway Studios in Nashville for the Impact Wrestling tapings this weekend and was asked to leave immediately, and the talent were then informed that they should reach out to Impact Hall of Famer and producer Gail Kim, Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore, or Ed Nordholm should they have any questions or concerns. Dreamer returned to Impact in 2018 to work in roles on and off screen, but it seems like his time with the company could be coming to an end. Next up, we have an update regarding the Grand Slam edition of AEW Rampage, which will air on Friday from the Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City. It has been confirmed that the show has been extended from 1 hour to 2 hours, with 3 more matches being added to the card. We will now see Eddie Kingston team up with Jon Moxley to take on the reunited Suzuki-Gun tag team of Lance Archer and Minoru Suzuki. Anna Jay of the Dark Order will go one-on-one with Penelope Ford, and the Lucha Brothers will team with Santana and Ortiz to battle Private Party and the Butcher and the Blade of the Hardy family office. This adds to the 3 matches that have already been announced, with Chris Jericho and Jake Hager of the Inner Circle taking on Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky, joined by American Top Team leader Dan Lambert. Adam Cole and the Young Bucks reunite as a trio to take on Christian Cage and Jurassic Express. And CM Punk is set for his first TV match in 7 years to take on Powerhouse Hobbs of Team Taz. The show is set to be taped this Wednesday night, before or after AEW Dynamite Grand Slam in front of AEW's largest crowd to